call the Honourable the Parliamentary Secretary and the member for Riverina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Abbott Trust government is absolutely committed to maintaining aviation jobs in Australia. We fully recognise, Speaker, the national interest in having a strong, viable aviation sector. A strong, viable aviation sector. That is why we are now taking the responsible action announced yesterday that we will not only ensure the future survival of Qantas, but we will also protect as many aviation jobs in Australia as possible. This proposal, as outlined by the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, is exactly what Qantas has asked for, precisely what they've asked for, and its most responsible course of action in the circumstances faced by the company. Responsibility. That's governing. It's not something that we saw over the past 6 years, but it is something we're starting to see under a responsible, mature coalition government. The government's proposal is straightforward, Mr Speaker, and even members opposite should understand it. In fact, it is my hope that they should actually support it. But dreams are free, Speaker. All we are proposing to do is level the playing field so that Qantas can compete on the same basis as its competitors, so that it can operate freely, so that it can operate in a responsible way. We are proposing to remove the shackles that Labor placed on Qantas when it sold the airline off. Sold the airline off, something the member for Gorton hasn't quite worked out yet. Specifically, the government proposes to repeal Part 3 of the Qantas Sale Act, which places restrictions on the company's ownership and governance. By not supporting our proposal, Labor is risking Australian jobs. It's as simple as that, risking Australian jobs. The next best thing we can do is to remove the carbon tax, because it is a massive burden on all airlines, not just Qantas, on all airlines. And yet those opposite, particularly the opposition in the Senate along with the Greens, refuse to accept the will of the Australian people. They refuse to accept this government's pledge to help Australian businesses and families by scrapping the carbon tax and relieving families of the impost placed on them by the previous government. The opposition refuses to accept that the Australian people actually voted on September 7, 2013, and the message from the Australian people was patently clear, absolutely clear, that they didn't want a carbon tax. They didn't want a Labor government. Get with the program. Get with the program. So unlike those opposite who actually privatised Qantas and imposed a carbon tax on Australian businesses and Australian families, we are a government focused on keeping our promises. We are a government committed to removing the carbon tax and repealing the Qantas Sale Act and not playing favourites in the Australian aviation industry. Instead, we want to save the aviation industry money by listening to the Australian people, removing the $106 million cost the carbon tax placed on Qantas by those opposite, by the Labor Party. We want Qantas to operate, as the Prime Minister said, over and over again today in question time, under exactly the same rules as Virgin and other airlines, and we don't want to subject any airline to a job-killing carbon tax. Now, I'm a regional member, Speaker, as I know you are too, and regional airlines such as Regional Express, REX, provide a vital service to many communities throughout rural and remote Australia, just like the member for Farrett, here the minister at the table. The airline has 48, she knows full well, and she's a pilot too, and she knows full well the role that REX plays. The airline has 48 aircraft flying to 36 destinations. Very valuable, I hear the minister say. How true. In December 2013, the company carried 84,000 passengers. REX also faces the challenge of a highly competitive industry. It's a tough industry, aviation, and cost pressures such as high wage costs and a job-killing carbon tax. REX profits are down, Mr Speaker, and with a 60% slump in half-yearly profits. Despite this, REX has not asked for a government debt guarantee or a blank cheque. They haven't asked for a handout. In 2012-13, REX paid, listen to this, $2.4 million in carbon tax. $2.4 million. In the first half of this year, 2013-14, REX has already paid $1.3 million in carbon tax liabilities. I spoke to the Deputy Chairman, John Sharp, in Parliament just the other day, and he was astounded at the impost that's still being placed on REX, a fine regional company, albeit foreign-owned, but a fine regional company doing a great job for regional Australians. Can't believe, John Sharp cannot believe the impost being placed on them and the fact that Labor won't get out of the way and, or perhaps even get in, help us to remove the carbon tax. REX was established in 2002 following the collapse of Ansett in September 2011 and is a merger 2001, and is a merger of the regional passenger arms of Ansett, Hazelton and Kendall. They do a fine job. They're paying a lot of money, a lot of their profits in the carbon tax. I urge Labor to get on board with this and remove this job-killing tax.